he became a celebrity, a media celebrity. So I actually want to, these are slides that I do for crowds that, you know, have heard the word psychodrama but don't necessarily know what the association is.
So, Mr. President, how do you handle promises that you made when you were running for election? How do you handle it? I mean, what do you say to people? Do you just, you know, I know people were wondering, you don't. Okay. Well, I know even some of the people in your own party were very disappointed when you didn't close Gitmo. And I thought, well, I think closing Gitmo, why close that? We spent so much money on it. But I thought maybe it's an excuse. What do you mean, shut up?
Okay, so I had actually decided to write the book, and I was starting to mess around with it by the time Mr. Eastwood's speech at the convention. And that night, I realized that you know, I just had to make it jail-centered. I was actually thinking about writing a history of the human potential movement, but every page I wrote, I came back to JL because that was my link to the movement. But then I decided I just have to, you know, I had to give up. I just make it a JL book. And I wrote a piece that appeared in the New York Times a couple of days later, trying to explain what was going on with Eastwood, not in a partisan way or an ideological way, but making the point that what he was doing there, which did not succeed at several levels, but what he was doing was linked. And you know, as somebody who's partly a professional historian, it was very important to me not to exaggerate the links, but I tried to connect the dots, and you can connect the dots. It's very clear. So, for example, some of you might have read Alan Arkin's memoir, in which he says once in a while when he's doing an improv exercise, somebody will shout, you know, this is a lot of psychodrama. Well, Alan Arkin, of course, came out of Second City. In the book, I explained that Second City came out of a group at the University of Chicago in the mid-50s, where one of your colleagues named Jim Sachs was hanging around with the cast, and Jim actually inspired some of them to go to the mental hospital in Chicago, where he was then being an intern doing his clinical psych PhD. And they got some sketches, at least one sketch out of that experience at the hospital in the mid-50s. And then there was a woman named Viola Spolin, who many of you know, who did improv exercises. JL and Viola, I don't think ever met, but they were definitely aware of each other. She was certainly aware of JL. And then it comes down to the present. So here's Tina Fey, who told the New Yorker several years ago that she had been in Psychodrama. I did, and by the way, I don't know if you know this, but I want a lot of time for questions and discussion, but so I'm going to run through this pretty fast. But Tina Fey, when she was like 5 years old, she grew up out here in Philly, and she was. Remember that? You know that?
I know that, yeah.
Good. So you know that there was an incident. She has a little scar under her lip. She was slashed by a stranger, and when she was little, and nobody ever found out what happened. I think they never found the guy, but. Clearly, it's important to her, and she got into psychodrama. She uses, she beats people up, and she told the New Yorker she pretends the fellows are George Bush and so forth. And she uses psychodrama in 30 Rock, and I'll just show you this one little example.
Hey, Tracy, this is Suzanne Hocker, the NBC therapist.
Who's crazier, me or Ann Curran?
Hello, Tracy. Jack informed me of the talk you had earlier, and if you don't mind, I'd like to hop right in and start with some role play.
Like my wife and I do? Cool. You be the maid. I want you to scream. Diane, you play the matador.
No, Tracy. What I want you to do is talk to that empty chair as if your father were sitting there.
Now, this is stupid.
Come on, Tracy, we're here to help you.
Tracy, maybe it will help if Jack sits in the chair and pretends to be your father.
I want to talk to you, son.
You sound nothing like my dad.
Well, where's he from?
All I know is he's from funky North Philly. He worked at a Campbell Soup factory, and he had a droopy lip due to an unattended root canal.
I think I can do this. Okay, go.
I'm mad at you, Dad.
Hey, dummy, I'm mad at you too. Why you gotta act out that way?
That's not exactly what I had.
Because you left me, Dad.
I was young and confused, and your mom didn't want me around no more. Now pass me them damn collard greens. Is this true, Mom?
Okay, so he then instructs him to do a role reversal. Lots of nice coincidences. When I was finishing the book, actually in December 2013, a colleague at Penn wrote to me and said, "Are you aware that there was a cartoon about your dad and Woody Allen on the web?" Turns out that a guy named John Wilcock, who was one of the first editors, founding editors of The Village Voice, was a big buddy of Alan Konigsberg, we know as Woody Allen. Woody Allen called him up one day around 1960, 61, said, "Hey John, let's go out, but let's do something different. Let's go see Moreno do Psychodrama." And so I actually got in touch with the cartoonists and reprint the cartoon, the comic in the book. And my mother says that she remembers that incident, and that he was on not only one time that Woody Allen was there, and that he was using Psychodrama, she says, to develop his Schlemiel character in a way that really annoyed the group, because they could tell that he wasn't taking it seriously. He was using it as an exercise. But what I also found fascinating is that, and I got to Tina Fey, by the way, I got to her manager, but she had a new project going, and they never endorse or blur these celebrities. There's too much rides on, anything that somebody says in the book that they endorse reflects on them and could create a lot of problems. So they never blur at that level. And I couldn't even get close to Woody Allen. However, although he makes a lot of jokes about psychoanalysis, and he actually does psychodrama. Because how do you do psychoanalysis, right, in the movie? So here's an example of how Woody Allen obviously got this idea from J.L.
Fielding Mellish. Mr. Mellish, what is your nationality? Well, you might say I have two nationalities. Are you being coy? Well, I am an American citizen and also the president of San Marcos. I would not joke with this court if I were you. Wouldn't you, or couldn't you?
That's enough.
So, and there's another little example in Annie Hall. This is the double.
You seem so distant. What's this doing here? Was it my imagination, or you just going through the motions?
Al, do you remember where I put my drawing pad? Because we just, yeah, I don't remember this drawing.
Right. So I, obviously trying to make the point that I try to make in the book, that the stuff lives on in improv theater. I'm not going to talk at all about the origins. I think you all know about the origins and the break with Freud, and the first intimation of sociometrics in the refugee camp in 1916. One of the problems in talking about the years that he was in medical school is that he did so much that it made it medical school. So his is both his religion of the encounter. They all wore little green cloaks and had Christ beards, as he said. Publishes Invitation to an Encounter, the famous verse. He has I think a somewhat controversial relationship with Buber. Did they or didn't they know each other? JL said they did once. Buber said he didn't remember that they did. But what we do know is that JL published some top people in intellectual circles in Vienna and Prague. Max Brod, who was Kafka's literary executor, who did not burn Kafka's papers as Kafka wanted him to after he died. Franz Werfel, who wrote Hollywood screenplays and a book about the Armenian genocide, and Max Reinhardt, a very successful Hollywood director and theater guy in the States when he also emigrated. And this is a little advertisement. Martin Buber's Hasidic Tales book is on the top. This is before he did I Am Now. And my dad's Invitation to an Encounter advertised under it. So those connections are clear. It's hard for me to believe that Buber didn't know about Invitation to an Encounter, but never mind. Also very interesting that on April 1st, in 1921, JL goes to the Comedian House, where one of his actresses' dads is the director, and he tries to do a psychodrama, basically a sociodrama. The new leader of Austria puts an empty chair in front of the stage, and people audition. Nobody succeeds. But as you can see, the theater reviewers were not impressed. The only fool in the room was the guy who was, doing this on April Fool's Day. Nonetheless, he did the theater spontaneity, including, of course, his most famous product, maybe the greatest actor of the 20th century, Peter Lorre. While I was writing the book, I discovered that there's a wonderful biography of Peter Lorre by an historian named Stephen Youngkin, came out in 2006. Who knew? I read it with some trepidation. Would he even mention JL? Maybe it was all made up, because my dad was capable of that. Actually, this is what Stephen Youngkin says. It completely confirms all the stories about Ladislaw Lowenstein, his original name, and that JL gave him his name, Peter Lorre. Now, unfortunately, we don't know the role that Peter conserved. We don't have no video of the role that Peter conserved in 1921 in the theater spontaneity, before he went to Bertolt Brecht and then to Fritz Lang. But we do have M. Has anybody seen M in the room? A few people have. So it's very clear that what he's trying to do is, unlike the wooden acting, the non-expressive acting of the era, he's trying to do something very new. What that he clearly learned in the theater spontaneity, I'll just show you this scene very briefly. He plays a pedophile and a child murderer in M, 1931, Fritz Lang, where the idea of expressionism really is exemplified. Incredible scene. You don't actually see his face very much. Mostly what you see at the end is his body, the way he uses his body to express the erotic excitement that he feels, and then the way that the soundtrack is used, you're lost in his consciousness, and then as he comes back, the street noise comes back. Genius. He learned how to do psychodrama in a simple room, but my dad had this idea for a stage. There was a lawsuit. My father accused Ernest Kiesler, Freddie Kiesler rather, of stealing his idea, another theater architect in Vienna, of stealing his idea. He accused him of theft and plagiarism in front of the Lord Mayor of Vienna in 1925. Kiesler then sued JL, and this became a big episode, as many of you know, in the newspapers. This is a JL on the left with a crocodile on the radio in front of a judge, and Kiesler, little Freddie Kiesler, the little bohemian as he was called, on the right, very annoyed obviously. And this is the idea here is a journalist who sided with Kiesler said that the two stages resemble each other about as much as a crocodile on a radio. And there was another cartoon. These were two colorful guys, everybody knew everybody in Vienna, fighting it out on top of the stage, Moreno and Kiesler. One of the reasons JL was annoyed at Kiesler, I believe, and I try to explain this in the book, is that Kiesler was a high bourgeois Jew. JL came from pretty much, middle class background. Father had abandoned them, and we know that Kiesler was well off because his cousin was Hedy Lamarr, before that known as Hedy Kiesler, who was. Can you have a crush on a woman who's been dead for 50 or 60 years? Because I do. I love Hedy Lamarr. She's just terrific. These little historical peculiarities fascinate me. So then we have the words of the father, radio film, you probably know, got him here on a contract in 1925. But he had a hard time getting established, like any new immigrant. There was a very rocky relationship between the new Republic of Austria after World War I and the US, so he had a hard time getting a visa. Finally, a woman, Beatrice Beecher, married him so that he could become a citizen.